Oh, yeah, that is. This is Between Hook Sets. I'm Jason Walter from In Through the Outdoors with my partner in slime, Kurt Underhill from the Fishing Crew.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going good. Yourself?
Excellent. After the hook set, I'm not quite sure where to focus. Do I focus over here, over there, over here? You know, look straight at the camera.
Have you ever focused in life?
No, heck no. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
My middle name has never been focused, and it never will be. Although tonight, I think I might be in a super focused mood. I'm pretty excited for our guest tonight.
The Bills.
Yeah, we've got the Bills. So
Yeah.
Bill Waeckerle and Bill Hines are going to join us. They are with the Walleye Restoration Coalition up at Akaska, and I've heard about them for a couple of years. And you know, it's time to have these guys on because it's time to have a talk. Because there was a ton of positive energy floating around the last meeting on August 22nd, and I'm starting to feel that positive thing. I like talking more positive than negative. I used to be a negative guy because I'm like, well, I can argue with, I can do whatever. So, hello there, Zach Queen. Let's get rid of this and let's bring those boys in and let's talk to the Bills here.
How are we doing tonight, guys?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Very good. We've got your thumbprint now so we can get into your phone. So unfortunately, we record everything here.
Great to be with you guys. Yeah, we appreciate it very much. Thanks for inviting us on.
Thanks for taking the invitation. You know, the interesting thing about the coalition, and let me just pop up your logo here real quick. Lake Oahe Walleye Restoration Coalition. You guys have got great things in mind. I know that you've had a number of meetings over the years. There've been some meetings that have had some negativity to it. Some people upset, this, that, and the other thing, but we're not going to talk about that today because the last meeting you guys had, I heard, and Kurt was going to go, I would have been there if I didn't have to do the motocross thing down in Renner, South Dakota. So I would have been there. It would have been great to be there. But you're here tonight to tell us about what happened on August 22nd, what you heard from the GF&P, what their efforts are. There's so many things to go through.
I think before we start that, let's kind of start in the beginning and how you guys started this, what this is, so people that don't know understand what you guys got going on and why you started it. I think we all know why you started it, but let's just kind of talk about it. And anybody watching tonight is going to kind of be an eye-opening event. You know, I think there's a lot of information people misperceive. There's a lot of things out there in the world of the walleye world and fishing and the Lake Oahe in itself. I think we're going to learn a lot. So why don't Bill, one of the Bills, kick us off? Where did this start from? Why did it start? Go for it.
Well, for several years, Bill Hines and I were involved in building the fish cleaning station here for Casca because we knew that was needed. And we raised the money. Bill was a retired contractor, so he did the construction, and I was in charge of raising the money. And during that time, people were complaining. Businesses were complaining up and down the river. Fishermen, guides were complaining that there weren't enough walleye in Lake Oahe. And I told them, you can't just complain and call one or two here and there. You need to get organized if you want to cause some change. So that's how we started the Lake Oahe Walleye Restoration Coalition. I came up with that name in the middle of the night. I woke up and I said, this will do it. So that's why we got the tag that we have. But our whole idea was to bring the walleye population into fishing back as it was in the 80s and 90s, and to help our businesses and towns up and down Lake Oahe and all the fishermen as well, guides and so forth. So that was our goal, and our goal was, like Bill Hines said earlier, to be positive and work directly with people. We've been criticized for this, that, and the other thing, but that's normal amongst fishing people. They always criticize things, so we accept all that. But we're working, and as we got into this with Game Fish and Parks, with 7 or 8 meetings, studying their facility, visiting with their technical people, we quickly realized that the problem with getting enough fish stocked in Lake Oahe was that all the game fish and parks people throughout the state were competing for those resources. Those resources were limited. So that's where we got on to, hey, let's get these RAS rotating circulating fish systems going so we can raise enough stock to stock not only Lake Oahe, but all the fisheries in South Dakota. So that it's been good. We've had good relationships with the hatchery manager. He's done a wonderful job, Michael Barnes, and Mark Fensel, who's in charge of Lake Oahe, and Sharp. It's a biologist. They've been very helpful to us, working close. The game fish and parks and the bureaucrats have been a little slow getting things online. We're not very patient. I'm 76 and Bill is 70. We don't have a lot of time to mess around here, so we'd like to get this fixed for you younger fellas if we could.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling us younger and for getting this going.
You know, I mean, it's not nothing. I don't want to take negative, but it's nothing that it's not been already said. But, you know, for the longest time, they would argue that stocking Lake Oahe works. And last year in the fisheries meeting, they came out and said, spoiler alert, it works. And I talked to one of the biologists off to the side, and they just said, you know, we didn't think it wasn't that it wasn't going to work. We just think we could ever put enough fish in to see the difference. Well, you know, like I tried to tell them, you put 200,000 in and 20% make it, and they spawn, you're going to have reproduction over time. So, I mean, it works. I mean, at the end of the day, it works, and it's going to work. And getting the fit, you know, we've always been, Lake Oahe's been where they've taken eggs from.
You know,
they're
guys,
not really putting them
back. I studied that quite a bit off of their own website and studied all the numbers that they put in there since 1971. And they quit stocking in, I believe, 78. Well, they put millions and millions in there before that. Well, fishing was pretty good in the 80s and the 90s around here. And now all of a sudden you take Mother Nature or the Corps of Engineers where the water levels go down, and they hurt our spawn, they hurt our rainbow smelt population. We all know what happened in 2010 or 2011 with flooding over the dam. That destroyed everything. Okay. And I think they're realizing that the stocking is working and it's going to make a difference. We're the cattle prod that keeps pushing them and say, okay, if that works, let's start pushing that stocking thing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the recirculating aquacultural systems, the RASs. It's a round tank. They grow these eggs using tablets and warm water and filtering the water. They can grow a walleye in a tank in a building to 14 inches in 1 year. And they will reproduce in the wild. The system started for the commercial food industry, but most of the states around here are using these instead of the old ponds and putting their fry and their fingerlings out in ponds and then trying to catch them again. They keep them in the RAS. And they've got one operating at Cleghorn, and they're building another one out there, and then they're kicking another one out at McKinney. I've been out and visited with Cody and Brian 4 or 5 times and looked at these operations. If anybody's out in that area, it's pretty phenomenal to go in there and get a tour of this. And our future, I believe, our future stock of our eggs and our implants are going to be raised in these RASs. They're going to have to create one for a brood stock, so to speak, and just keep the females in there so they won't be able to use it for other fish. But eventually, if we can't get up the Grand River, if we can't get up the Morrow River because of problems going on up there, now we can start kicking our own eggs out. I think this is really the way of the future, and I believe that the department is thinking that way too, because they're spending a lot of effort. Michael Barnes, John Locke, Mark Fensel, all these guys, Jake Davis, Tom Kirschman, all those guys are pushing forward on that. Noam's on board with it too, and Kevin Roebling. They're all going towards this and getting that going. This is more of a constant for us to produce our fish instead of having to rely on Mother Nature or the Corps of Engineers or relationships to get up the Morrow and up the Grand, so on and so forth. But
so it's less eggs We're taking less eggs from females. It's less invasive because you're taking how many are you growing in this system? 10,000, 100,000?
They gave us some numbers, and I'll have to get my glasses on here and look, but next year they talk in pounds of fish now, which I'm not
Okay.
smart enough to figure that out. And in the last couple of years, I think they maxed out at 2,400 pounds. Next year, they plan on kicking out 12,000 pounds of walleye out of Cleghorn, which is phenomenal.
Okay, so that's probably, let's call it 13,000 walleye then, because that 14, hard to tell. You're growing a 14-incher in a year. Nature grows a 14 in what, 2.5 to 3 years?
Well, yes, they look for a 14-incher in 3 years, and it isn't quite happening on upper Oahe. It's happening on lower Oahe, are getting close right now. And but the smelt are coming back. We heard that from these guys. The herring are going back down. The Cisco's or herring are going back down, but that's a normal gradation thing. And they're putting in stocking all these impregnated gizzard shad, which is why Sharp and Francis Case and all these things kick out fish after fish after fish. That's their main forage. We've had the luxury of having the rainbow smelt, but you guys don't realize that. But up here, I used to be in Mobridge, and now at Akaska, after the 4th of July, we didn't even go fishing because the rainbow smelt would go down to Sutton's Bay or Bush's Landing and Charlie's Creek, and we'd have to go down there and chase them. Well, now these gizzard shad are keeping these fish up in this area quite a bit longer. We're having still pretty phenomenal fishing up here, which in July and August is almost unheard of.
Right. But the July thing, July 4th comes and the walleye are gone.
Yeah.
They've been
there. Yeah. Make a long story short, we really believe this program that the game fishing parks is doing, and that's one of the things that I told Bill again early on. I said, we're going to work with these guys because they're still in control. We can complain about them all we want, but it doesn't matter. We're going to help do what we can do to help them. And we've gone around and visited a lot of sports clubs and had meetings here, and actually had meetings with Game and Fish in Mobridge, been to 3 or 4 commission meetings. Like I said before, been to Cleghorn 4 or 5 times, and just visiting and interacting and acting with these guys and asking them what we can do to help. And I think they appreciate that too, instead of somebody yelling at them.
Quick. Can you guys explain this graphic? And
which one is it? That's the upper Oahe. Yeah, let's see. The green line is, I'm going to get my chart out here.
Green line is 15 to 20 inches.
The 20 inch and the 20 fish. We're going in the right direction. The red dotted line zone is where they want to be. Okay. In years past, and I don't see the years on the graphic, but there it is. Okay. Back in the 90s, it had dropped down, and again, that was the water going down situation, I believe, and then it's come back. But they're real positive about this. Lower Oahe is in a little bit better shape, and because they have been stocking more down there and also putting more forage base down there. And
that seems a little more
I know there was some guys. Well, their idea, guys, is, and I don't understand it. They're the biologists, they know, but they're going to do an every other year flip flop. So in other words, if they stock fish in upper Oahe, the next year they'll stock forage base in there because they don't want to do it back to back to back because they're concerned that and I guess it makes sense from their standpoint. But I know when we started this thing, we had some fishermen from lower Oahe that were kind of jumping on us thinking that we were stealing all their stockings. That's totally not the case.
What we asked them in our 5-year plan that we submitted to the Game Fish and Parks Commission was to stock 5 million fingerlings in Lake Oahe, rotating 1 million south, 4 million north, 4 million south, 1 million north. Now that'll change to pounds because we're going to be putting in some juveniles and some larger walleye. There won't be little fingerlings like they've been coming out of the pond. So their survival rate will increase substantially.
Oh, I would guess it would just skyrocket.
So, couple of things on that, guys. So are they gonna put fry in anymore, or is fry gonna be all for the raft system?
The fry is basically if they have extra fry, they put it in. That is not something that they look forward to. They're going to be fingerlings. But if there's fry available and they get their hands on it, they'll dump it in just because it's no sense wasting it. And
Yeah.
my understanding, and again, I can't tell you the correlation between the numbers and the pounds, but their big thing now is here's the Cleghorn RAS facility, and you can't see this. I don't know if you can see it if I hold it up. This sheet.
Oh, well, yeah, we could see the white graph. So the
white graph on this side over here is 2025, and that's the 12,000 pounds that they plan on putting in Oahe.
That was just from
and this is what they put in 24, 22. So you can see there's quite a bit of an uptick because of this Cleghorn RAS is going to be online.
So if we use the AIM Pro Walleye Series length to weight conversion chart, a 14-inch walleye weighs exactly a pound. So if we're looking at 13,500 pounds, is that what you said? We're looking at 13,000.
Yes.
Walleye.
Well, I think you're going to have. I think they're going to put fry in there 2, 3, 4-inch fish.
They probably won't be 14 inches. No. They put some of them in Sheridan Lake 2 years ago, but they probably won't transport them all the way out here to the river. They'll probably be twice the size of the ones coming out of Blue Dog or bigger.
Okay.
Well, and when I was talking to Cody and Brian out there, we actually built a salmon spawning station down at Gettysburg back in the 80s. And then I built headquarters. I built 2 or 3 buildings for the Game and Fish and got to know a little bit about their stuff. But the 10% rule for fish in the wild is a survival rate. What that means is in the wild, fish drop their eggs. 10% of those eggs will grow to a fry. 10% of those fry will go to a fingerling. 10% of those will grow to a juvenile fish. 10% of those will grow to a catchable, livable fish. So if you put 1 million eggs in there, you might wind up with 1,000 fish that you're going to catch. And that's Mother Nature's rules. Well, I mentioned that to Brian out at Cleghorn, and I talked to him and I said, well, I assume you guys are going to get a little bit better survival rate with your RAS. And I said, I would think you may be hoping for 25 or 30%. And he looked at me with daggers in his eyes. He said, we expect to get 75 to 80% survival rate.
Wow.
And so that being said, now you don't need to take 120 million eggs. Maybe you can get by with 40 million eggs. That's pretty phenomenal going through all the forward thinking on this. And Michael Barnes, I think, is the big one that's behind most of that. He's a pretty phenomenal guy.
So if they're putting in Sheridan Lake, what are they seeing? Or do they got them tagged, or do they got them anything like that to monitor their growth rate after they're into the wild?
I don't think they've done that yet. They're in the process of it, according to Fensel. And I soon found out these guys, hatchery guys, aren't the biologists out in the field. They said they put in their orders and we just raise the fish. What they do with them, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be interesting to know if you're going it to 14 inches in a year.
Right.
If it, obviously you're just force feeding that thing food, basically. I mean, there's no other way to grow than eat, right? I mean,
warming the water, control temperature, control circulation, cleaning the tanks regularly, feeding them. The thing they're trying to do is make sure they transition those bigger fish from the food that they get to the food that will be available for them in the lakes and rivers that they put them in. That's their big challenge right now. They want survival rates. The hatchery guy wants his fish to survive, and the biologist definitely wants them to survive. So.
And we did this, right? I mean, as anglers, we want them to survive as well, right? I mean, that's just the
survive thing. So you can kill them.
Yeah. So, with that being, I guess another question: did they bring up? I know we brought the gizzard shad up a couple years ago, and it was all concerned because the gizzard shad's a warm water fish; they might die off. Do they see like last year?
There was some concern.
Did we see gizzard shad make it through? And if we have a hard winter, are we going to lose gizzard shad, or are they acclimating a little bit to colder water?
We're going to see some die off, and we saw some last winter in Upper Oahe around Gettysburg and some other areas where I don't know if it got too cold too fast or something. Finsel was explaining it to me, but you're going to see some die-offs in there, but that's normal. And at the same time, just 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, we had an abundance of a hatch of gizzard shad. And those little ones are just swimming all over the place on the top of the surface. And we saw paddlefish actually jumping up and grabbing these things up here. It's
and they grow to 4 to 6 pounds, pretty big ones. And we don't see the big ones dying off. The smaller ones we'll lose. They'll sometimes spawn 2 or 3 times in the summer, drop 200,000 or 300,000 eggs each time. So when we put in 2,500, 3,000 of those gizzard shad every year, and that's what our plan requests, and that's what they've been doing. You can imagine how many millions of little gizzard shad can be floating out there for those fish to eat. And they don't eat each other, so that helps too.
Well,
yeah, that doesn't go crazy with it.
Because of the colder water this year, they hatched a little later and they aren't growing as fast. Those little 1 to 1.5 inch schools that we saw a few weeks ago should have been 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches. And that was a concern of Mark Finsel's. He said, if they don't get big enough, we might see if it gets cold fast, we might see some of them die off. But they had a phenomenal, I think they put 5,400 impregnated in total Oahe, didn't they, Bill?
Last 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So they're on that mission. They're going to keep going with it. So.
Okay. So let me pop up these graphics. You shared them on the Facebook page. This is 2024 walleye stockings. Explain this for us.
Okay, I've got to find it here. Okay, yes. Do we have it up on the lower on there? Which one's red is fingerling and the fry? I can't see the total graphic.
Yeah,
red is
the fry is
fingerling.
yellow, fingerling is red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and I guess that one, it's telling us that in 24, they got another one on here in 24 where they stocked 2.9 million. I'm not sure where that chart's at.
2.89 south. Yeah.
Let me see if no, that's walleye growth. I don't think is it either.
They'll show the stocking points where they stocked them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I thought maybe I'd grabbed all of the graphics there, hoping you guys had them kind of.
I didn't bring the graphics with me.
I've got a packet here. If you can bear with me, I'll find it.
Yeah, no, that's
growth
okay.
rate is starting to come up in Upper Lake Oahe. As you see the second chart, lower has been pretty good, but they're starting. They want them to get to 15 inches in 3 years, and they do better south than they do north, and that's been consistent for a number of years.
The gizzard shad stockings in I think it was 2,226 and gizzard shad adults, impregnated gizzard shad. That's a big number for them. That was in 2024, and that was all the way up and down the river. Now 23 they had upper Oahe, but 24 lower Oahe got more. They got Minneconjou, Cow, Peoria, Swan, Whitlock, but so they're going to keep us abreast of that. The walleye stockings, I'm looking at this chart. If you bear with me, I'll find it. 2023, they had 3.9 million fingerlings, and that was mainly in upper. There was some in the lower, but then you go back into 2024, and we had 2.887 million fingerlings, and they were all in lower.
Okay.
So that's,
just so people know, we're calling the 212 the dividing line for upper and lower, correct?
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Yeah, that so people understand that when we talk 212 upper and lower, we're talking 212 south is lower, 212 north is upper. So the Gettysburg area.
Right. And it's been explained to me one of the reasons that they grow faster on the lower is obviously because that's where the herring, the Cisco, and the rainbow smelt hang out. We get some up here when they spawn, but as soon as that water warms up, boom, they're gone. They're back the bus down to Cow Creek, and you guys get to catch them. But
so now we have a comment in from Mike Peluso. I don't know if you can read that. It says, now if we can get North Dakota to help stock the upper end, we'd have a perfect storm. He's talking about North Dakota
I
Game.
missed a little bit of that. You were breaking up.
Sorry, he said.
Kurt, you were breaking up a little bit.
Now, if we can get North Dakota to help on the upper end with some stocking, we would have the perfect storm. You know,
I agree.
It's just been, it's a great thing. So with these fish going to be put in at 14 inches, you know, roughly, you know, we're going to have fry, we're going to have fingerling, we're going to have a little mixture of everything, it sounds like.
I don't believe, let me stop you. I don't think we're going to be putting 14 inches in there.
No 14 inches in Oahe. They're all going to be the smaller.
I think they're all going to be the fingerlings,
Okay.
2, 3, 4 inches, but the survival rate on a fingerling
is much better than
it's 3 or 4 of those 10% equations better than the fry and the little tadpole size.
You've seen the fingerlings that come out of Blue Dog, you know, they're inch and a half.
Yeah.
These will be 2 to 3 times.
They'll be bigger than that.
Yeah, so they'll truly
So
be.
why, if we can do this, grow them in a year, why are they not going to stock those here, or is that eventually the plan?
Say again, Kurt, I missed it.
So if they can grow them that big in a year, is it going to be eventually be the plan to put the 14 inchers in our system, or will that never be in our system?
I don't think so. I think they're doing this just because it still costs you a ton of money to raise those fish to that size in these tanks, and it uses up all their capacity. They're right, what they're doing right now, and they have to think other species than walleyes. I don't, but they do. But
that was my next question.
Yep.
Yeah, they for example, they got some eggs from Nebraska last year. Well, they got them a month earlier than here, so they put those out, and by the time they stocked those, about the time that we were just hatching our eggs from South Dakota, well, then they emptied those tanks, and then they put catfish or smallmouth bass or something else in those tanks to keep them working. Because if they would have to keep these round tanks in there, or these round tanks operating and not change fish, you can't produce any more fish. You just have to let them grow in there.
Sure. So what's the status of perch? I swear I heard somebody say that the GF&P is not going to stock perch anymore. Have you heard anything in your meetings about that?
We have not.
Okay.
But what they want to do with these recirculating systems, when they do the walleye cycle and they got the walleye all out in stock, they want to raise fish for urban fisheries for around our towns and cities, so these kids have something they can go catch. My basic thought, and I say it every time I'm in a meeting, every mom will let a kid have a fishing pole, but not every mom will let them have a rifle or a shotgun. So if we want to have outdoor activities and people involved, fishing's the way to go.
And kids love it.
100%. I mean, and honestly, like if you look nationwide, the urban ponds with the 3R program is a big part of the 3R money comes is, you know, the fishery side of 3R goes for urban fisheries with green sunfish. So that's a federal program that brings some of that dollars in for that. And, you know, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think we all could say we started on a bluegill at some point. You know, I think some of my earliest fishing memories were sunfish off our dock in Minnesota. You know, I mean, like when I go up and see the grandparents, I'd catch sunnies off the dock with corn. It's a great thing. It gets us all hooked. But like I tell them, I said, that's great. I'm 100% for that, but we don't own $150,000 walleye boats for boats for green sunfish. Right. So we have to do just as much, if not more, for the walleyes as well, or the other species. And if they're raising catfish, all they need to do is come to Lake Oahe, and they can stock every lake in North America in catfish.
The money is in the walleye. The money is in the walleye. That's what brings people to South Dakota. That walleye is the money fish. The other one is the fish in the urban fisheries that keep kids involved in fishing and will have a future of fishing.
Kurt, when I had our first meeting with Lot, Pencil, and I don't know, a bunch of guys were there. And after a little bit of discussion back and forth, I said, and we were just thinking Oahe at the time. We've soon discovered that this is Lake Oahe, but it's South Dakota walleyes. Everybody needs walleyes. But I looked at them and I said, what's the biggest tourist attraction in South Dakota? And I said, I think we can all agree it's Black Hills. What's the biggest attraction out there? Mount Rushmore. I said, if you take Mount Rushmore out of the Black Hills, you're going to lose 30, 40, 50% of your tourists. You take walleyes out of Lake Oahe, you aren't going to have anybody coming.
Yeah,
And,
right. Oh, it's a
100%.
dead sea when the fish aren't biting.
yes.
Whether it's bobs or south or west, whatever. If the fish aren't biting, it is a dead sea, and there's nobody coming to town.
The few years where those fish turned into little 12 and 13-inch skinny things because of the lack of the forage, that fishing numbers were so down. And if you look at the sales tax charts up and down the Oahe River, there's people that dropped from 18 to 30% for 2 or 3 years. I mean, these motels, resorts, gas stations, I talked to them all. Frank Smith's tourism committee on there, we talked to him quite a bit. And he said this last year, because of what the game fishing parks are doing, and we like to take a little credit for that. I don't know if we can, but we like to. And he said his numbers are up immensely. And that's what we're after. Everybody, you put fish back in the system, nobody cares about too many guides, too many tournaments, too many anything. It's all good.
We've changed their way of thinking, I think. I think we've convinced them that stocking works. I think we've convinced them that putting gizzard shad in every year works. And we've convinced them that these RASs and numbers of stockable fish are the key to survival for our walleye system statewide. And also for the urban fishery. So I think they're all trying to think, we're going to go to game fishing parks, pat them on the back for what they've done, and give them a little spur again to keep them going, keep them funding these guys in the field that are trying to do all this good work for it.
So I know something I saw come out of your meeting is they're talking about building this RAS over on Blue Dog in an empty building, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any talk of changing the old fisheries to this, or does one need both?
I heard some talk, Kurt, that they're going to refurbish some of the infrastructure at Blue Dog because I believe they need both. I don't think you can get by with just an indoor tank. We have also introduced Michael Barnes and his staff to Northern University because it would be an awesome extension service and an internship service for their students. And they're looking for something up between Blue Dog and Oahe. Part of the problem with these fingerlings, when they raise them in this RAS, they got to transport them.
Yeah.
And they get harder and harder the bigger they are. So that's one thing. It would be nice to have an RAS right on Oahe, in my opinion, but it takes dollars.
Yeah.
And then we told them we'd help them do what we need to do there. We can raise a few funds if we have to, but we can't do the whole thing. But along with that, they also said part of the problem with that is our first thought was we're going to put one in a casca. Well, it would be great for us, but he said part of the problem is you got to have a qualified staff to run it too. It isn't like you just hire the cement worker to come in there and raise walleyes for you. But
that'll come, but Mom might not come to a little rural Alaska. She might not think that's the best place to raise. It's a good place to raise kids, but she wouldn't realize that from a distance.
Yeah. But I mean, that's great work on all this. Is there any talk, and I brought it up in the meetings, is there any talk on putting a minimum on Lake Oahe to a certain point? I mean, if we're raising these fish to grow and grow and grow, if we don't put a 15-inch minimum at some point, I get it when they go deep. The deep water hooking ain't good, but why don't we have a minimum on Lake Oahe until July?
I don't think that's a problem like it is down south from what I've seen. But we've talked about that a little bit, and Pinsel is the guy that discusses that. But
he thinks if we have a balance, Kurt, of fish, if we're stock them, alternating up and down in Lake Oahe, that we'll have a balance of fish from 4 inches to 36 inches in that system. And if we have 4-inch fish, we should be able to maintain that. And with that regard, and if we can keep our natural spawn going and not have to depend on those eggs, that we should be able to survive with stocking 5 million or the equivalent in pounds every year in that lake.
We have discussed that with him, and at this point, he doesn't think it's a concern or a problem that we could help ourselves out by doing that.
See, and I kind of beg to differ on that because, you know, if we want to grow a sustainable walleye, and then some of this goes back to, you know, angler satisfaction, right? I mean, I've had the talks with a lot of these people. You know, I think if we could literally look at keeping the fish 15 or 14-inch minimum and letting some of these fish grow up to what we want to catch, the 15 to 18, whatever, why wouldn't we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to bring that, you know, limit them and let them grow up? I mean, that's just my opinion. I express it every time I'm in a meeting with them, is you can't tell me taking thousands of 13-inch walleyes out of the system don't hurt fish growing up.
I agree totally.
Yeah,
I agree totally. But I think one of their answers coming back is if we can keep this forage base in a shallower water zone where these smaller fish reside, they're going to grow faster. And I think that's what we're seeing. The Cisco's and the Rainbow, there's a ton of big fish out there, but they learn to adapt in the 40, 50, 60 foot of water. The little ones don't figure that out for a couple of years, I don't think. And
so pop that back up. Kurt, pop that back up. So let's give that a minute or two here. So
you want to read it, Brian?
I would just, Corey's saying, I would say bass fishing would bring more money into South Dakota if they'd concentrate on smallmouth and start stocking largemouth into sharp. I guarantee sharp would bring more money than a wahi. When they took the size limit off of sharp, it hurt the smallmouth population badly. All the guides started taking limits of smallmouth over 18 inches.
I guess I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't, good thought.
I don't think people are going to come to South Dakota for bass fishing. I really don't, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, we're getting more and more. I mean, the Bassmasters Elite shined a light on it, and I don't disagree. I mean, I don't disagree that bass fishing, I mean, it's going to help the South Dakota in money in general, but we got to worry about one population of fish first. And Corey, I think our backbone personally has always been Lake Oahe is a destination walleye fishery in the world. I mean, if you talk to anybody across the country, they talk about how they wish or how they've been or how great Lake Oahe has been. And that was going to kind of lead into my next question is, over the years, you've heard these, they try to put Atlantic salmon in, they try to do all these other things. And I mean, hopefully they just stick with walleyes until we get the walleye population strong and sustainable. And then,
that is our goal.
And then you look into everything else,
My friend from Canada that's been through this up there with stocking walleye and everything, he says, Bill, he says, when we first started this, I talked to him 4 or 5 times, get some concepts. He says, remember, the biologists all go to the same school. And they look at that lake or the river system like an aquarium. And they want all these little different kinds of fish swimming around in there. So remember what you're dealing with when you do that. So to your point, they don't necessarily always agree with us guys that focus on certain types of fish for certain fisheries.
Kurt, I'm going to hang on to my first statement that I made in Mobridge that you take the Black Hills or Mount Rushmore out of the Black Hills. It's the same thing as taking walleyes out of Oahe. It's going to tear the place apart.
I 100% agree with you. And I mean, people might yell at me for saying this, but
the truth.
What I was going to say, it's the truth, but what I was going to say is, Lake Oahe can be we can have different fisheries. If we want to start stocking sharp with other things, because them walleyes don't get big on sharp. It produces walleyes every year and it does what it does. It's never going to grow a state. I mean, I shouldn't say it's never going to grow a state record, but if you think of that, like it doesn't have the forage base and it doesn't have the stuff to grow these things big, start stocking on one of those. Or how many lakes over east could benefit from smallmouth and largemouth? And
Kurt, I grew up in Aberdeen, and we had a cabin at Pickerel Lake when I was a kid, and they started stocking smallmouth, and they put them in every lake over there. And it's actually torn those lakes apart. I mean, some of them are coming
100%.
back, but in my opinion, a smallmouth bass is a finely tuned eating machine.
They eat a lot of little walleye.
That's all
They
they do.
take the walleye right out of your.
We've got a lot of smallies up here now. Way too many, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
you know, the smallmouth thing though has become so popular. Troy Dede's state record out of Oahe.
Sure.
You've got the
Sure.
Bassmasters coming and fishing it. It's been, you know, it's just been huge. You know, it just kind of blew up. And I've gone out and I've done some bass fishing with Casey Briggs and done some top water stuff. It's a ton of fun. I get it.
Oh, it
I
is a
really-
blast.
You know, and that's great. I hope that Oahe can sustain a bass population, but Oahe's bread and butter is walleye.
I agree totally.
What do you guys think we should be doing as a coalition? I know, Kurt, you had even suggested if we had a board of directors, you'd like to help us with that some time ago, and I appreciate that. But what do you have any ideas, suggestions for us? We're going to stay on this.
I think. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to. I have one real quick. I follow the Saskatchewan Sport Fish Research Group out of the University of Regina. It's Dr. Chris Summers, I believe. They've got a fantastic program up there. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but look up Saskatchewan Sport Fish Research Group on Facebook. They tag and they keep track of walleye, and it is amazing. The stories that come out of this Facebook page and this group is phenomenal. It's maybe something, and it's a program of researchers from the University of Regina up in Canada. So can that be done at Northern? Gosh, I hope so. So I think it's something to look at. I think it's another opportunity. So check that out. See what you think. You know,
I wrote it down and I will check that out.
Bill has good connections at Northern. So.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So Kurt, you're next.
You know, you're going to open a can of worms with me. You know, I think first and foremost, continue stocking, continue working on the RAS systems, try to get a fishery built on the river somewhere. You know, that would be incredible if it's Mobridge, if it's Pier, if it's wherever, because, and then once we get Wahi going, and I think we need to look at South Dakotas in general. Like, I mean, Francis Case is a struggling fishery. I mean, I've been doing tournaments down there and I watch the weights go down every year, and the fishing gets harder and harder and harder every year down there. And you talk to a guy like Austin earlier that's been fishing tournaments in April down there for 20 years, and he'll tell you, I watch the numbers go down every year on the weights that come in. It gets beat up with out-of-staters. It gets beat up with in-staters. It just gets beat up all the time.
With guides.
With guides, with everything. I mean, not just guides, with general fishermen, with everything.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to single any group out in this.
No.
I think there needs to be more research done on the deep water hooking. I don't think putting them back in nets is the right answer to tell me if they're going to live or not. I think, you know, why not get a group of qualified anglers and make them come in for a half day or a full day class and give them lip tags and let them lip tag these walleyes and see what really happens. Let's see if we catch another fish that came out of 40 foot of water. You know, I mean, I think that would be a great thing to progress into. And I really think our, you know, I don't want to be the guy that says this, but if they're sticking by 35 foot of water kills all the fish, then why are they limiting just to 1 over 20 inches? And I don't want to be that guy, because I want to grow big fish, and I don't want somebody to go out there and be a pig and take 4 over 20. But if you're telling me it's dead, why are we putting it back? Why are we not protecting the smaller ones and protecting the big ones?
I think there's a little bit of maybe, I don't want to call it suspicion, but maybe not as factual as what they want us to think on that mortality study that they've done. I don't know. But I think Mark Finsel is putting some tags out there and studying these fish. That I think he's in the process of doing that right now. And
so Mike Palouse said, I've got great perception on the slots I've experienced over the years. It would be a great topic at some point. You know, I mean, you look at North Dakota, and I said this to Finsel, and they say it's a different fishery, which it is. I mean, we can agree Northern Oahe and Southern Oahe are two different fisheries, even
Correct.
though they're in the same body of water.
Yeah, right.
But North Dakota, they stock every year on Chicagoia. Every year. They've done it for I don't know how many years. And they have a 5 fish, no slot, and it works year after year after year.
I agree. And
So-
they maintain their smelt better than we do because of their intakes at the dam. That's a big thing.
100%.
So let me
They've
ask
been
you this.
stocking, stocking is a key to it.
Yeah, let me
when
ask
they
you this
feed,
real
we have to feed ours. They got enough food normally, but they do put smelt in there too.
Okay.
Well,
So
I agree
now
with you guys totally.
with what Mike said, I can invite Mike to come on real quick. If you want to, Mike, if you want to come on, we can bring you on for 5 minutes and say what you want to say. Because maybe I'm going to send him the link. And
Hockey
Mike,
puck? I fished with him up
Yep.
at Indian Hills.
Yep. So
I mean, like I said, I
He's a
think
better
you guys.
fisherman than he was a hockey player. No.
I think you guys are in the right direction. You stay with them. You stay on stocking. I mean, I think that's a key is keep stocking. And like you said, we live on Lake Oahe. We're focused on Lake Oahe, but Jason will tell you, look at the charts over east. I mean, he'll tell you the charts are terrible.
Well,
you look at the over east lakes and the fishing isn't good because they get beat up. They get beat up year after year after year. We got Mike hopping on here. This is going to be fun.
Let me point this out. This is the alarming part. Over the last 15 years, I've been looking at these graphs. The number per net is 0 to 5. It used to be 0 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30, and that number's changing. And we certainly need to to do something about that. And I applaud your guys' efforts. I think it's fantastic. Mike, hello. Oh,
You're
I don't
muted,
think we can
buddy.
hear you.
Hit
Hi,
your
Mike.
mute button. Are you there?
Yeah,
we lost him.
He'll
He'll come
probably
in here in a
have to
minute.
again. This is one of those things that happens when you throw somebody on real quick. But if he's got something to say, here's the thing. If we want North Dakota to pay attention, we need to hear some of these things. And Mike's not just your regular average guy that's commenting. He's not a keyboard warrior. He is a respected guy that can catch fish and big fish. And I'd like to hear what he says in conjunction, or has to say in conjunction with what we're talking about tonight. So if we can get him on, it would be
That'd
fantastic.
be great.
I didn't know you did culling on your program.
Yeah, well, no, it's not illegal here.
We're sorting here. But so while we're waiting for Mike to hop on, have you guys seen this thing out of British Columbia on the Columbia River? They're throwing an 8-day fishing tournament. They're calling it the Invasive Species Fishing Tournament to eliminate the walleyes and northerns out of the Columbia River up there.
Yeah,
I've been trying to do that for years.
Yeah, they upped
They're
the limit on
killing their
walleyes.
salmon.
They upped the limit on walleyes to 16 inches. They upped the limit to 16
walleye.
fish a day.
Wow.
And they're going to do literally an 8-day tournament to see who can get the most walleyes out of the system because of the salmon eggs. Now, all joking, let's go up there and get their 2 to 3 pound walleyes and bring them in here.
we can move them.
If you could have a transport truck that would work, I'd drive it right now.
Yeah, I know, like, people are going to say, oh, invasive species. I'm just, completely joking, but let's go get those things.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Do we got you now, Mike?
I don't know.
There we go. We got you.
There we are. My
Hi,
phone
Mike.
got
This is
off.
Bill Hines.
I know.
My
boys. How
wife
you
and I
doing?
fished with you last year or 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah, 2 years.
Well,
And I got a kick out of the gal at Indian Hills. We said in South Dakota we call him hockey puck.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mike, let's hear your perspective on the slots. You live up there with 5 fish, no slot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So here's what I've seen, and I've seen it all over the country because obviously I've been fortunate enough to be able to fish in a lot of different places. and cutting my teeth, obviously in North Dakota, definitely on the Lake Oahe, Missouri River system, and then guiding on all three of the systems here, Devil's Lake, Sakakawea, and the Missouri River. The one thing I have noticed in all these years, and I could go to all these different, I could name a bunch of different lakes I've been on. The slots, what I have really experienced is you really start picking on certain size fish. And once you start doing that, then all of a sudden you have a heck of a time trying to find fish that you want to, obviously catch and keep. So what I see on Sakakawea, Devil's Lake especially, is I'll just use my guiding right now on Sakakawea this last week. I mean, we had a mixed bag. We had some 13 inchers in the basket. We had some 15 inchers. We had 18 inchers. We had 21 inchers. And certainly a lot of those fish are coming out of deeper water. So I'm telling my clients, the good news is we're going to catch a limit. The bad news is we're going to catch a limit. But I think what happens is in an overall picture, nobody's beating up on any particular size of fish. People are pretty good about, the not keeping the big fish, especially in my experience as a guide. People are really good about throwing them back and letting them reproduce. We monitor it pretty good too. Like, hey, that's a good eater there. Throw it in the box. And it seems like, especially with Devil's Lake and Sakakawea, I mean, there's just a good mix of fish in all sizes. Because again, we're not just keeping, 14.25-inch fish because now they hit that cut line. We're keeping some that are 13 inches. We're keeping some above that. So I think it just spreads it out. And I've talked to our biologists up here about it because I've wondered why. And I have pushed really hard to kind of almost mimic your guys' South Dakota a limit, just a 4-fish limit in North Dakota, but with no slot, and then give 3 fish per day on a 3-day total possession. So you lose one each day, you gain one on the back end, and that's more for people coming in. But that's just one less fish coming out of all the systems every day per angler. But I've really noticed that the slot lakes are the ones that are in trouble, and that's. You look at Leech Lake, you look at, all those lakes over Minnesota. I mean, those guys just beat the crap out of the fish that they can keep, and then they can't find anything to keep anymore. So that's been my experience over the years. And it seems like our 2 lakes, our big 2, Sakakawea, Devil's Lake, without slots, I can't believe how well they do. And certainly our Game and Fish does a good job stocking. And I think that goes right along with our boys right now talking about, what they're talking about. With trying to stock forage and just keep the ball rolling. Because you know what, I don't care what anybody says, more is merrier, and the more you put in there, the more chance they have. And
Absolutely.
These systems are big enough; they're going to sustain that type of population of fish being put in there year in and year out. And that's why
Put more fish in and put more forage in there.
Yeah, 100%. It's big enough; it can sustain it. That if North Dakota would start stocking this upper end a little bit harder, that would be nice as well. I do know they do stock some of the forage stuff like you guys are talking, which is good. And we've got something going on up here. I don't know what they are. I've been trying to figure it out, but our fish up in Upper Oahe through North Dakota are really healthy right now. And they're finding food, and they're finding a lot of it. I don't know if it's smelt.
I think it's that gizzard shed.
And it might be. They're doing really well. So
There's a bunch of drum too.
Yeah, and they do. They eat a lot of baby white bass, drum, crappie. There's a hell of a perch population up here too. And
there's a lot of perch. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's prime. I think it's just ready to go. But yeah, that's my only thing with slots. I've just seen way too many lakes that have them that just don't seem to do well.
Mike, don't you think that our fishing population has gotten acclimated away from everybody taking pictures and keeping the big fish? Aren't you?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I guide, thousands of people in a year, both ice fishing and open water. And I have never had a guy, basically tell me that he wants to keep that fish. They're so good about taking a picture and throwing it back. I mean, I can talk about anything. And I think that's great.
As soon as we get every taxidermist to only do replicas, we'll have it made.
Well, this is all I do. I mean, I just do canvas prints and throw those fish back.
Oh.
I mean, I got enough fish on the wall. I don't need a mount anymore. So
everything behind me is fiberglass.
Yeah,
I painted every one. They're all fiberglass. There's nothing real.
Yeah.
And from a distance, they all look real.
Yep.
And it's so simple. It's so easy to do a replica, and they last forever. You do a real skin fish, and you're going to redo that thing in 10 years because it needs to be
Yep.
reconditioned.
Yep.
And a replica, you might blow the dust off and that's it. So I agree.
So I asked some of the biologists last year at the meeting here down in Pier, and I said, why are you protecting the big fish? If you tell us over 35 foot, they're dead. And they straight up told me it's a social law. It's a social law. There's no scientific or biological proof that them fish do anything better in our system than the rest of the fish do. It's because people complain that Mike Peluso's at the cleaning station with 4 over 20 and they've got 8 inchers. And they said, unless general public would want to change it, they would never talk about changing it.
Yeah.
And it's a social law.
I believe that. So, I'll give you a little experience from my week up on Sakakawea. I mean, our fish we did find some shallow fish, which was very refreshing. But I tell my clients jumping in the boat, I said, the good news is we're probably going to catch our limit. The bad news is we're probably going to catch our limit. And me being a guide, yes, I could legally take 5 fish a day. And I normally don't until it turns into this time of year where we do catch some smaller fish that blow up. Now, I do tell them when they hook a fish, no matter what, I tell them to take it really slow. And we kind of baby them up in, and I check every fish that comes in their mouth to see if the bladder's out, if it's really red, whatnot. And if it looks like it's got a chance, we'll send it back. Obviously you can tell. I mean, you can tell the ones that are, under a lot of duress, and it seems to be working because, I mean, there's a ton of pelicans up by us. Now, I did talk to a diver last year, and Sakakawea was in a really goofy mood last year where those fish were deep all year. And he was diving on a couple of pretty popular spots. And this was shortly after a tournament where guys were all pre-fishing. And he did say there was quite a few dead walleyes down there, but he goes, it wasn't anything over, alarming. But at the end of the day, I think every fish you try to throw back, it's got a chance to live. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also it depends on the person bringing it in too.
100%. That's why all my clients just slow down, just take that slow. Like me, I catch enough fish in a year. Like if I know it's not very big or whatever, I kind of let it just dangle down there for a while and let it readjust, and I'll reel up a little bit more. And then I know that fish is fine. But the guys that are cranking them in, 100 Mach 10 coming up and the eyeballs pop out, throw it in the live ball. Don't feed it to a pelican.
Yeah. This is my opinion only. I used to scuba dive, and at 33 feet, you'd have to stop and decompress. You go to 66 feet, you'd have to stop, decompress. Right. And it's kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of the same thing as the walleye, but I don't know that for a fact.
Talking about the slot back in the 80s out of bushes there used to be a competition, see who could come in with a full limit of over 6 pound fish.
Right.
And I hope that the ethics of the fishermen have changed where that wouldn't be the case. In the event they would do something about the slot, but they were loading up with them.
I think
they wouldn't fit on the cleaning tables. It was a mess,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
There's always a few, but I think that in general has changed quite a bit, don't you guys?
100%.
Oh, I agree. And I think the big thing is, and we've talked about this, they try to bring the perch limit over east down, do these things. And I don't think it's a fisheries issue. It's a social issue. You got these young guys or all guys of all ages that want that hero shot on Facebook, and there was a deal in Minnesota. A guy was telling me about, he said that there was a lake in Minnesota. They did a survey on it. The limit was 5 fish on this fishery. They did an entire year-long survey, and the people, like the angler satisfaction was super low because not everybody's catching their limit. The very next year, the average amount of fish that were caught for the whole year was 3 walleyes. They changed the limit to 3 walleyes. Angler satisfaction tripled because they caught that magic thing called the limit.
Right? Go home and say they caught their limit.
Yes.
Until we get that mindset out as public that we don't need to go catch a limit. Mike guides, like you said, every day, all day. Does Mike need to take a limit home every day? No. He can't eat that many fish. You know, I mean, and so if we get that perception out of our head that it's not a good day unless we have our 4 or 5 fish in the box. And I'm not saying there's not times that we've all done it. We've all went and caught our limit and we take them home and we do it 2-3 days in a row and we have some fish. I'm not doubting that, but when you're out there every single day trying to just see how many pictures on Facebook you can get,
I
You're
agree.
devastating these fisheries.
Mhm.
And we're sitting here complaining at game fishing parks to stock them, but yet as an angler, as a sportsman, we're not doing our part to not be greedy pigs.
Kurt,
Yep.
you don't have as many relatives, as big a family as I've got. You can't imagine how many walleye they can eat.
But you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you see these guys, and you know, I have a hard time with game fishing parks, you know, taking off the, you know, no possession limit in your house, but then your cabin, you have a possession limit. And, you know, it's such a mess. It's such a hard thing to do. And again, like Mike said, a 3-day, so South Dakota and North Dakota, you can buy a 3-day fishing license as a non-resident, but you can keep 2-day possession.
I don't
That doesn't
understand
make
that either.
sense to me.
Right.
They want to
That's
get rid of the 1-day fishing license, but they want to only sell 3 days, but I can only have 2 days possession to leave with. How does that make sense?
Doesn't.
You know,
One of the guides around here told me they do that, so the guys, they want to cook their fish at night, they can cook them in the motel or at the lodge, and they can still take their 2-day possession home. That's one answer.
and then that's one answer. But I mean, at the same time, there's guys that don't cook any of them and just risk it driving out of town, right?
They leave, yeah. They get 2 days limit and go.
Yeah, I don't think that's a stocking or a game and fish problem. That's an education problem.
It is. It's half our problems are social problems. But if we make laws for social, look how good that works in our country right now, making social laws. They don't, it doesn't work good. I mean, we can all sit here and raise our hand and tell you how social laws don't help.
Yeah.
If you start with politics with Bill and Bill, we're going to be here until about
I'll
midnight.
learn how to turn that button off. We go into politics.
I've had you guys in the boat. That is the truth. So I get it.
I mean, Mike, it's great to have your opinion. I mean, you've done it a long time, and you live in a state that doesn't have a slot. And maybe if people see that and understand that, I'm not advocating to get rid of it, but if it makes the fishery better, and if you say we're killing them over 35 foot of water, why are you making us put them back?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where I get in with my clients, especially this time of year. Is, you know, I tell them, hey, we're going to catch a limit, and as soon as we do, we're done fishing. Like I apologize to them. I said, hey, it's a good day. You got some fish now to take home, and we're done. And
Yeah, it's not like they're in 15 foot of water now.
No, so I just tell them flat out, whatever we catch, you guys, let's say I got 2 guys in the boat, we get to keep 10. I said, once we got our 10th in the box, we're done. We're going home.
Well, I went to Northern State University. If you guys want to watch the Gypsy Day Parade, come on up here in about October, November, and look at all the lines of boats trying to catch these big dogs.
Oh yeah,
you've probably been up here. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll happen again.
Yeah,
I stay as far away from that as I can. I go around the corner and go up tomorrow and catch some fish.
Yeah,
there you go. Well, fellas, thank you. I see we're at an hour already, so Mike, appreciate you popping on. That was great to have you.
The party, but
hey, good to talk to you again, Mike.
Absolutely, you guys got to get your butts up here again. We got to do some fishing.
That could happen. It might. Say,
all
guys,
right,
I want to tell you before we leave. Thank you, guys. We're going to keep doing what we're going to do and keep proceeding it the same way. We're going to do whatever we can to help this fishery get better. We're not pointing fingers. We're not blaming people. We're going to help it get better.
Yeah. And let me just pop this up real quick because it's not going to cover you up. But if you want to follow along, want to know more, got a Facebook page. You have a website too, I believe. And it's the Lake Oahe Walleye Restoration Coalition. You'll learn plenty if you visit the Facebook page or go to the website. If you want to partake, be a part of it, you can get a hold of Bill and Bill. They do answer their Facebook messages rather quickly, and you can be a part to help out. Take part. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great Labor Day weekend.
That was good.
Yeah, what the hell's up with electricity?